Hey everyone, how's it going? My name is Dr. Kerry Magro, and I'm a professional speaker, best-selling author, and autistic self-advocate. I'm really excited to be here tonight with Jesse Seperstein, who is a acclaimed speaker, a best-selling author, an autism advocate, and he's actually considered one of the most respected leaders in the anti-bullying movement of his generation. Jesse was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, a form of autism, when he was younger, that gave him profound talents and challenges. And Jesse has a very unique story. We were talking a little bit before this actual interview about some of his challenges growing up, trying to make friendships, and some of the accomplishments and successes that he's had the opportunity to do today. So Jesse, really excited to have you on. How are you doing tonight?
Very good, Kerry. It's wonderful to be here, Dr. Magro.
So, Jesse, we had a few pre-submitted questions that came in, which I would love your opinion on. So, Jesse, the first question that came in to us was, why did you decide to become an anti-bullying advocate?
Oh, that's an excellent question. I'm glad we started out with that. It's because my life was certainly ravaged by bullying as a young child. I have to say that life did not get significantly better until the age of 34. Bullying, even when it supposedly died down, always took a different form. And I've been called pretty much every name in the book. Even in college, one of my nicknames was Sketchy Jesse and the Wanderer. I'm not sure why I was called the Wanderer, but there were a lot of names like that thrown around. And the worst of it was being a victim of what we now call catfishing for 6 months when I was a junior, well into the start of my senior year of high school.
Interesting. So obviously you've spoken at so many events about anti-bullying. Can you share with our viewers a little bit about just like what was one of your favorite presentations you've given on anti-bullying so far?
By all means, I have to say that my favorite moment was speaking at the Mall of America, and I did that in, I believe, April of 2012. It was amazing. I also met this incredible family, the Kramers. They have 3 young children, Elliot, Ada, and Henry, and I still keep in touch with them to this day. The best part about that trip was the indoor water park in the hotel, I believe. I never had a chance to sample it, but it's been on my bucket list and so forth. But every presentation has full moments. I'd say that the other reason it was my favorite is because it was the first time I tried a PowerPoint trying to pretend to be more prestigious than I actually felt at the time. And I realized if I got through it then I'd be up for other challenges in future speeches.
Absolutely. I love that, Jesse. So, Jesse, for people who are just meeting you for the first time tonight, when were you diagnosed and what were some of your challenges growing up on the spectrum?
My diagnosis came shortly after the start of my freshman year of high school at age 14 back in 1996. Something that has not changed and I doubt will ever improve a ton is I've always had the biggest problems during transitional periods. The start of high school was absolutely brutal. All of a sudden, people decided to have one last prolonged explosion of bullying. I was in what I call the biology class from hell. It was so bad, even my teacher quit at age 50 by the end of that year because of that class. It was like they put every miscreant in the school in this one tiny class. But that was a pretty bad year, so bad that I ended up going back to a psychologist. Actually, this time it was a psychiatrist, a lot more expensive, of course. But at that time, I was diagnosed with being on the autism spectrum. My biggest challenges were adapting to new environments and learning the correct behavior and the other shenanigans that were barely tolerated in the previous environment may be considered to be abominable in the new place. And I always seem to have to learn these experiences the hardest way possible.
Nice. So, Jesse, obviously, autism is a very wide spectrum. And one question that constantly comes up in our community is this whole DSM-5 conversation, where autism is now this just umbrella diagnosis. And a lot of people with Asperger's who have confided to me say that they're really not sure about this, because some of them say they feel like their identity has been taken away. Others feel still empowered by just having Asperger's, regardless of this umbrella diagnosis. What is your take on this whole DSM-5 with this whole umbrella diagnosis that we have now?
I previously mentioned how much I despise transitions. In my mind, it sometimes feels like fixing something that was working perfectly in the past. And that's sort of how I have felt a long time about the new diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder. I kind of prefer the old way because people are getting used to how Asperger's has its own set of criteria and symptoms, gifts, talents, and of course weaknesses slash challenges. And all of a sudden we mix things around and shake it up in a box, making things more confusing. I know that they did not do this for absolutely no reason. In some ways, it probably makes sense and makes the diagnosis a little bit easier. But you're right. I have felt that it interferes with the identity of having Asperger's syndrome. And I will still say that I live with Asperger's syndrome, regardless of what's on a clinical piece of paper.
So, Jesse, that's incredible. And we also have a lot of comments and questions that are popping up for you tonight. And one of these is from Michelle, who is actually one of the autism advocates we've interviewed in our previous series. So for people watching at home, I have a nonprofit where we try to empower self-advocates by sharing their story with our large platform. We have over 208,000 Facebook followers, and we really try to give a voice to so many self-advocates within our community. Michelle was one of them. If you go to the video tab on our Facebook page, Carrie's Autism Journey, you could learn a little bit more about Michelle's story. I was so glad to see Michelle gave you a shout out. How did you and Michelle meet?
We met through a group called Ask an Autistic. And we started being a part of this group led by Jessica Likeweights. And this was probably back in April. We talked with other self-advocates. The purpose of this group, Ask an Autistic, is to have parents join in and get some hope for their children as well as strategies. And Michelle and I were actually featured in this new book called This is Autism. You can see her. I don't know where I'm pointing. This is her.
Oh, yep.
In her graduation. And I'm
That's
somewhere,
awesome.
but I want to give shout out to Michelle. So you can check out this book created by Jessica Likeweights and her editor, Alden Allman Cooper. Aiden Allman Cooper. Aiden.
So Jesse, so obviously you've written a few books now, and it's so funny you mention that, because there's a woman named Susan who says, "Hi, Susan. I recommend its books. Very insightful and really well written. Jesse is a wonderful writer." So we have a great question that came in from Vernon. Hey, Vernon. Hope you're having a great night so far. And he asked, "When did you start speaking?"
Well, Vernon, this is not a big deal. It happens all the time. I mean, literally 80% of the time. But my first name has no I in it. It's Jessp. But to answer your question, Vernon, I started speaking around 2010, probably as early as 2009, right before I started promoting my first book, Atypical: Life with Asperger's in 20 1/3 chapters. And it was really hard at first. I definitely told quite a few inappropriate anecdotes about things like online dating, but I have an ability to analyze and overanalyze my behavior and gaffes and things I've done right. So that constant scrutiny of myself and occasionally from others led to becoming a more polished speaker.
So That's really great. And yes, for everyone at home, Jesse also has a website. If you go to the description, it's jessesaperstein.com. I keep hacking his last name. I apologize, Jesse. But it's really great to hear that. So I was nonverbal until I was about 3, and then didn't start speaking in complete sentences until I was 7, which kind of brings me up to my next question, Jesse. So I also didn't have many friends growing up on the autism spectrum. I didn't really have my first true friend until I was 14 years old. For parents, teachers, and educators who might be watching this, what would be some ways that helped you get out of your shell and really make friendships as a kid?
Well, I want to remind teachers that everybody develops at their own pace, and sometimes close friendships are not in the cards. The other thing is, it's not always up to us whether we make friends. Someone else has to reciprocate and also put in the effort. And there may be a specific year or even 2 years in which a child is hopefully not being bullied or treated like a psychopath, but at the same time, they may have classmates who want nothing to do with them. And that, unfortunately, is not seen as a form of abuse. That's up to the free will of other people. And you cannot obviously force people to like you, but just to tweak the odds that you will have friendships, it's critical that teachers always build up the self-esteem of their students, even if they're engaging in an activity or a special interest that others find repulsive. For example, let's say a student is a hardcore brony, meaning that they're a male who likes My Little Pony. Obviously, that is not going to make them the coolest kid in the whole school. But if they are being relentlessly picked on because of this, or told that they're weird, then it's up to that teacher to I guess, promote that interest, to glorify it, and maybe have the student give a presentation to the class about why My Little Pony does so much for them.
Nice. So we have a lot of great comments coming in, and you have over 100 people watching you right now, Jesse. No pressure. You're a public speaker, so you have had large crowds of people before. So it's really interesting you talk about the whole concept of friendships, and how you can't force people to like you. So I guess going into just like later adulthood, because you do talk a lot about the transition to adulthood for those with disabilities, what advice would you give to somebody who's watching this who might be trying to get into a relationship for the first time? Because friendships, and then hopefully maybe one day a friendship may lead to a relationship. What would be some advice you would give to those individuals?
Without trying to toot my own horn or brag, I have to say that I'm one of the handful of individuals like us who has had romantic success, in the sense that I've had experience, and I have also met ladies who like me as a lot more than a friend. But at the same time, there were occasions when the grass was certainly not greener on the other side. And I've asked, what in the world have I gotten myself into? This is a nightmare. It's critical to understand that if you're being abused or put down constantly, it's not worth it. And it's also critical to listen to those in your life who say this person is not right for you. You need to get out of this situation, and we'll help you if possible. Maybe if 1 out of 75 says that, it should not be taken too seriously. Maybe that person is just jealous or has a bad attitude. But if 75% of those in your life are saying this does not seem right, then they're probably onto something, and you do have to listen. And I've been trying to break up catfishing scams. That's a big platform of mine. I've been a victim of catfishing twice. I mentioned the one that lasted for 6 months when I was only 17, and one happened maybe just a couple of years ago. But thanks to my knowledge of the past experience, I was able to recognize it very quickly and terminate the connection.
That's
So
really good. Oh, go ahead,
the
Jesse.
rule,
I'm sorry.
okay, the rule of thumb, Carrie, is that anytime someone contacts you just out of the blue with very few mutual friends, and they're a lot more beautiful than you are and younger, it's best to just have some semblance of reality and think, something's not quite right. This kind of thing does not usually happen to someone like me. And
Well,
yeah, go ahead. I'm
no.
done.
What I was going to just say on that is expectations versus reality. We always have to kind of be mindful of some things we see in the movies is not necessarily what we're going to say. So I actually bring up a lot of this. So I wrote a book also called Autism and Falling in Love. And I wrote this book based on years of trying to find love on the autism spectrum. And also, like Jesse, having dating success as well. It's on Amazon if anyone wants to check it out. I would definitely recommend, I mean, especially Jesse was talking a little bit about online dating as well. It's a great platform. Sometimes there is the whole catfishing scenario. However, you get time to prepare your thoughts, what you're going to potentially say to somebody versus face-to-face interaction, which might be very challenging in nature for some to kind of go off the cuff and to listen to a lot of what the individual is saying. So Jesse, Amy is a rock star. Amy is like your PR agent. Amy is on tonight. Amy is just showing you a lot of love. I don't know how you know Amy, but she is really giving you some love. Let's see. So we have a lot of great questions coming in. Let's see. Recommending your books as a comment. This is a good question. So obviously bullying is one of the leading epidemics we currently have in the school systems today. Were you bullied by girls or school faculty when you were a kid in school? Because teacher bullying is a really big deal also, I guess.
I think I was pretty much bullied by anyone growing up, girls, teachers, fellow male classmates, everything except the school erasers bullied me. And I am kind of exaggerating, of course. There were people who showed tremendous amount of kindness. But yes, that online scam, the catfishing when I was 17, that was perpetrated entirely by two females who were spearheading the whole thing. And this, as I said, this went on for 6 whole months, and it was relentless at times. They were so determined to trick me that they actually arranged for me to meet someone at a local diner, and they found a woman from a neighboring school district to pose as the woman I was talking to online. So I actually met someone in person that usually.
How long ago was this?
I'm now 38. So about 21 years ago. But I try to remember how it felt. I don't want to forget about it or let it go, because people are going through this now as we speak. And
yeah, no, absolutely.
I want to answer the other part of your question.
Sure.
Even though it was certainly not as frequent as my peers, I was occasionally put down by those who were supposed to help me. A couple of times I basically heard, well, what are you doing to bring this on yourself? Or I think a lot of this you cause yourself. Or actually at the time he was speaking it in the past tense when I told him I'm having a much better year than my freshman year, the year before. And he said, that's great. Your classmates have matured and so have you. But in my opinion, a lot of it you caused all by yourself. And in 5th grade, I was bullied so bad by my teacher that my mother had to take me out of the class in the middle of October of that year. He basically saw bullying as a self-inflicted consequence for choosing to be abnormal, meaning that this is the natural consequence for deviating from what's considered normal.
That's crazy. Wow. And how did you cope when that happened. Obviously, mental health is so important for so many people, regardless of they're being bullied or not. But what were some of the ways that you coped through all of that, and how you kind of learned how to cope as you even got into adulthood?
Not very well in some cases. Some years were better than others, but maybe it's what we call a self-fulfilling prophecy. In other words, I would think I cannot keep this up forever, acting normal and not saying something extremely odd or creepy. So I might as well just get it over with and exaggerate my oddness, because they'll find out about it eventually. And furthermore, if a year went off to a horrific start, I would think to myself, damn, so much damage has already been done that it's almost irrevocable, irreparable. I might as well keep going, because I cannot possibly unscrew up this first impression.
Got it. So, Jesse, what is one misconception you currently see out there in the autism community that you wish was debunked?
Definitely that being unable to let go is a bad thing. People always trying to say to us, you need to move on. You have to learn to let go, or enough, just stop. In many cases, that perseveration, that need to hold on for dear life, is the catalyst for unusual success. I'm still haunted tremendously by things that most people would not give 2 cents about. For example, I'm still feeling guilty that I never wrote my mother and father during my 4 weeks at tennis camp in Vermont. So I know that I'm not able to let go, and that sort of is a catalyst toward great things. We should think of it as a potential gift. The attitude should be that as long as what we're doing is not illegal or wreaks havoc in every aspect of our life, we should embrace it and find a way for it to exist, even if we have to compromise. I'll very quickly give you a brief example. One of the greatest things that has ever happened to me is I was able to make contact with the Dr. Phil show just a year ago, and I have this friend with morbid obesity. He has quite a story. He was always been morbidly obese. Then he lost 400 pounds and regained all the weight back plus more. And the reason I contacted the Dr. Phil show is, what if something terrible happened? How would I feel if I had not taken action? The worst thing that usually will happen if we reach out to people and try to make a difference is someone is going to scream at us and say, who do you think you are? Don't ever contact me again. You're annoying. And that just means someone who's a real jerk is never going to speak to us the rest of our lives. Wow, real big deal.
So Jesse, this question came in, and everyone, a few people wrote in and said, can I ask Jesse a question? Absolutely. Write in the comments, and we'll try to get to as many questions as we can during the live. So this question, and I have to scroll up a little bit, is from Melissa. Hey, Melissa. So Melissa writes, he's 18 years old and goes to an adult school. He wants to speak and get a job, real friends, and a girlfriend. And her question is, my brother dreams of learning to talk and make friends. How can he learn to speak? Have you heard, what are some of your favorite methods to kind of encourage not only sounds, but also words and communication from what you've heard in the community?
I'm not sure if he's completely nonverbal or is only able to communicate a few wants, such as I am cold or I'm hungry. But of course, there's adaptive equipment. And I know someone named Paul Kotler in the autism community who's a prolific speaker. I see you nodding.
Yes.
What I'm talking about. And on the surface, he appears to be afflicted with a severe case of autism. and someone who's ignorant would just assume that this guy has an IQ of 4 and is completely disabled. But when he types in his devices and writes emails, you can see his overwhelming intelligence. Maybe, Melissa, your brother can learn how to be a public speaker, and that will give him confidence as well as connect him with countless people at once who will want him in their life.
So Melissa came back and said mostly nonverbal and can communicate a few wants. He types but wants to speak with his voice. Yeah, Melissa, just from my experience, I actually have a webinar, which if you message me, I'd be more than happy to send you a link to, on ways to help a nonverbal child communicate. Some people are going to be nonverbal for their entire lives, but there are others who are learning how to talk every single day. So definitely reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to. And Jesse's talking a lot about communication devices. We could talk about augmented communication and really kind of break down what your brother needs the most help with.
I also would like to say to Melissa, before we answer Carla's comment, maybe just as a starting point, you can include him in outings with you and your female friends, so he gets a little bit more confidence with girls, and that will enhance his self-esteem and make him understand that other people do like him, even if it does not seem that way, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. Good, great response to that. So, hey, Carla writes, can you talk about stimming and your personal experience, how it changed over the years? Thank you. So, Jesse, I actually don't know about this. Did you used to stim as a child?
Used to. I still do now. It's not as prevalent as when I was much younger, but I do this. Sometimes I do it under the table, and I had to watch that because people, without being too obscene, people thought I was doing something naughty under the table with my hands instead of just shaking them. But I usually stim when I'm distressed about something or flap my hands. I really try not to do it at work. My favorite expression is "you're an adult first and somebody on the autism spectrum second." An example of a time when I did start stimming was when I was getting a new car. I'm probably the only person in the history of mankind who's ever been distressed that his mother and father helped him buy a new car. I remember flapping my hands vigorously in the bathroom of the auto dealership because I wanted to hold on to my car for 1,000,000 miles, and my family finally forced me to put it to sleep. So usually I stim if there's a big dramatic change, or if I'm thinking about an unpleasant memory from the past. So to answer your question, I try to always be busy and occupied with things, because it's during times of idleness that I'm more likely to be upset about something and stim due to a bad memory. But obviously, in many places, you do have to control yourself or find some kind of a device like I don't know, Play-Doh to rub in your hands, or that fidget cube. I must have a fidget cube.
The fidget cube, the fidget spinners.
Right. So doing that, it's a little bit less distracting than flapping your hands. And if you do it in, say, an airport, you could attract unwanted attention.
Got it. So everyone at home who's just tuning in right now, my name is Dr. Kerry Magra, professional speaker. I'm here with another speaker who also happens to be on the autism spectrum, Jesse. We're interviewing Jesse tonight to spotlight his story for our nonprofit page. So if you learned anything from tonight, you could see in the ticker, if you learned anything at all and have a few bucks to spare and want to support our cause so we can produce even more self-advocate videos moving forward, please give what you can. It would be amazing. So Jesse, we had a few more comments come in, and so there are a few questions about nonverbal, which I hope we'll get to. For everyone watching at home, we just discussed that a little bit earlier in the live. I actually like this question that came in from Krista. Hey, Krista, how you doing tonight? What is the best way to handle the OCD that often goes along with autism. Now, Jesse, I'm not specifically sure about these statistics, but I believe about a third of autistic individuals, especially autistic children, also have some form of OCD diagnosed disorder. Have you experienced this during your journey?
Definitely. I've never been diagnosed, but I definitely have some OCD tendencies. For example, one is a big phobia of unnecessary waste. That makes me afraid to go into most restaurants, especially those who
Preach.
are not familiar. What was that, Kerry?
No, I said preach. I hate that too.
Yeah, and things like straws and styrofoam, it gives me nightmares. So whenever someone does not listen, I get pretty upset. I'm able to control myself, but internally I'm thinking, how could you do this to me? And I'm able to control it, though, when it matters the most. For example, when I was starting my current job, I would go into the garbage and take out the recyclables and put in the proper container. And my supervisors were not pleased to have a staff rummaging through the garbage like a starving raccoon. In my own house, all bets are off. I'm able to do what I want, but do I want to keep my job or save the world from being contaminated by garbage? So I made the right choice in that case. But with OCD, you have to understand what a person cannot let go of. And if it's really important to them, and it's only one or two things, by all means, find a way for it to work in that child or adult's life. And if you have to plan out the ritual, you have to ask yourself, are you prohibiting this OCD behavior because you do not understand that it means so much to this, or is it because it's actually making a person's life unbearable and taking away from other priorities?
That's so interesting. So Jesse, one question came in, and I have no idea. I don't believe you've been on America's Got Talent. I mean, maybe you did. You're a very talented individual. But Mary, hi Mary. Aw, Mary, I don't know if that's your baby also, but your baby, if it is your baby, is super cute.
Yes.
Jess, was you on America's Got Talent? I laughed so hard. So I know there was one autistic individual. There was Cody Lee, who was the nonverbal singer, nonverbal singer, blind singer on America's Got Talent. And then there was a comedian who I also think had autism. Jesse, you weren't on AGT, were you?
Not that I remember. You must be confusing me. If you're thinking of a musical act, then that was definitely not me. I do not play the piano, and I quit the clarinet when I was in 4th grade. But I'm not bragging about this, but I was on the Dr. Phil show last January. So maybe that's what you're thinking of in this case.
So Michael writes, how can we join that group? So Michael, if you could be a little bit, if you could write in the comments, just let us know what group you're talking about. If you're talking about my supporter group, or if you're talking a specific group that Jesse may have mentioned that I completely missed. For everyone at home, when I'm looking at the side, I'm just looking through your comments, just making sure we try to get to as many as possible. I'm not ignoring Jesse. Trust me. I could talk to Jesse for hours on end. So Jesse, we talked a little bit about misconceptions in the autism community already, but in terms of language, what is one thing you should not say to somebody who's on the autism spectrum?
I suppose a real hot button for me is when somebody says, "What did he say?" When I'm right at like 2 inches from their face, I take it as an extremely personal insult, and that brings back a lot of traumatic memories of getting speech therapy and being made fun of the way I talk. But I think that's downright rude if it's anybody, whether it's me or Joe Schmo on the street. Any time that you see someone who's very monotone and uptight, it's best not to assume that they're nervous or uptight. That may not be the case at all. Maybe that individual is just struggling to say the right thing, and they have a reason to struggle, because if they say the wrong thing, it's not going to be pretty at all. When someone has a monotone voice, there could be a reason for it. It may be something that cannot be fixed, or if that individual does try to fix their speech, they could create a totally new problem, which is much worse. If someone is speaking too loud, maybe that's because in the past they've been told they mumble, and by speaking loud, they've tried to fix something that was much worse.
Yeah.
I just think that's best to not focus on fixing people or quote unquote making them normal or making them grind their way into a round hole if they appear to be a square peg. And just
That
because
is-
someone, one more thing, just because someone does not speak very well, or they don't speak at all, it does not mean that they lack a voice or are not an eloquent public orator.
Yeah. So I love that one because that one's so original and I haven't heard that one before. My typical one that I hate when people say is, you have autism, but you don't look like you have autism. And that really grinds my gears. It's like, what is autism supposed to look like? The other one being, oh, you're too handsome to be autistic. I'm new on TikTok for everyone here. So I did like a montage of a popular song and hearing that the other day. And I was like, really? Anyways, sorry, going on a little bit of a tangent there. Kate, who's incredible, by the way, I'm going to be doing a recording for her school. Says, Jesse, I hope you will be able to come again someday. That's really, really amazing that we kind of know, all of us know each other. That's really cool. Kate, thanks so much for being on. I also saw Kate tagged a few people to join us tonight. Go ahead, Jesse. I'm sorry. You were going to say something.
I was about to say, I remember that school. It's in New Jersey. And yep. I was working with a young woman named Amanda. It's going to drive me nuts that I don't recall her last name. So I'm going to look it up on Facebook, but I know exactly who she is and what school she's talking about.
Yeah. If you're interested in hiring Jesse for a speaking engagement, jessesaperstein.com. I'll include the link. The link is actually in the description of this video if you're interested in hearing him speak. My website is just carriemagro.com. Maybe me and Jesse could do a joint thing. That would actually be really cool. But yeah, definitely keep the conversation going if we could help after this.
Well, I want to say one thing before we're ending. Are we about to end now, Carrie?
Oh no, we're good. You're good to go.
Okay, just go on with the next question, please. Just please give me a grace period when you have to depart. And the woman from the South Street School who I worked with is Amanda Faison. Just so she knows, I saw we got a comment from Kate. So it was nice to see you again, Kate.
Yeah, and if for whatever reason she jumped off, I'm emailing her back and forth, so I'd be more than happy to send that her way to let her know. So we had a few questions come in about behavior challenges, and I'm trying to pick one that's universal. Like 3 comments in a row came in, all behavior related. Sarah, you're great. Heidi, you're also great. For now, let's go to Heidi's. Hey, Heidi. How do you handle behavior of a 4-year-old autistic kid who is very aggressive to other kids? Jesse, did you have any challenging behaviors or aggressive behaviors as a child?
I'd say the worst of it was toward myself. I went through a phase in 4th grade where I would actually hit myself. That was just a horrible year. One of the worst ever. But as far as aggression toward the other students, no, I never really participated in that, mainly because I knew that it would probably make my life much worse. And there was one time in that 4th grade year, I was aggressive. I was being pushed back and forth by 2 bullies in a line, and I charged at one of them, and he fell backwards, and I guess knocked over a few other students. So I ended up getting into quite a bit of trouble for that, and it was quite traumatic, all the trouble that resulted. And as a result, uh, maybe I did not fight back when it was absolutely necessary. But as I said earlier, we tend to hold on to everything. But in regards to your child, you have to ask yourself, why is he doing that? One reason could be because a lot of us do not react until much later to something that happens. Maybe he's doing it because all of a sudden a memory comes flooding back of a student who hit him a long time ago, and he wants to he wants to get his revenge and let the student know how it feels, even though it happened months ago. But whenever your child has a good day, you should take him to an ice cream store or something that he loves doing, and just explain it's because you see that he's doing better, and you want to make a big deal out of the good behavior, more of a big deal than the bad stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Very well said. So, obviously we had that question. We had two more questions that came in. I hope that was able to help a little bit. What I will say is I have a webinar called Autism and Teaching Conversation Skills, where I talk a little bit about challenging behaviors. If anyone is interested in checking that out, it's in the comments of this Facebook Live. Definitely check it out if you're interested in learning more about this topic. I'm not going to leave that comment up, but it's in the comments of this live tonight. So Kate actually wrote in with a really great question. And it actually focuses on the times that we're currently living in right now with COVID-19 and online learning. And Kate writes, do you guys have a particular tip for kids with autism online now trying to dealing with just the whole online learning and all the stuff that goes into that?
Wow, it's this Zoom stuff that did not even exist during my childhood. So I do not have any tips as far as helping you from my experience. But with online learning, it's important to let a child know that that this is what everyone is doing now. This is what we call the new norm, and some things will never be easy. But with online learning, maybe you can give the child a fidget cube like this, and ask the child, what can I do to make this a little bit easier for you? Or I have a treadmill desk as well that seems to help with being online all the time. A lot of kids have aspects of ADHD. They have a great deal of trouble sitting still. So you can factor in a ton of breaks as well. And with each step of daily online learning, it's good to make a to-do list. And whenever something's crossed off, no matter how tiny the incremental task is, you can overpraise the child and do a weird dance like they do in the Panera Bread restaurants when someone gives them a tip and they sing a song about getting $1 or something. So you need to appeal to the child's sense of stimulation, in my opinion, and give them a reason, a reward for doing the right thing.
Jesse, are you a good dancer? Jesse, are you a good dancer? I have a feeling that you're a good dancer.
Not really, unless you call this. Who am I trying to impress?
Oh goodness, I am a very bad dancer. But no, I think that's great. Kate, I wouldn't really add anything to what Jesse just said. I mean, really, the whole breaks I think is really important because when we look at the universal design of learning and we kind of look at how so many students need to move to stay engaged really with their surroundings and learning. Having those opportunities, also having the opportunity to not necessarily have everything with a camera on all the time. I know it's important for attendance and participation at some times, but I know so many children who have struggled with eye contact, especially feeling that they have to look at the camera 100% of the time when they're doing Zoom meetings and everything. So having breaks, but then also having breaks in between, having the audio and visual component, just to make it a little bit easier and a little bit more sensory friendly too. We have a few questions that go very, very long, and I appreciate that because the more detail, honestly, the better. I like this one from Rachel. Hey, Rachel. Rachel writes, how do I get my 13-year-old son to broaden his interest, or do I leave him alone, spending most of his day playing video games? I'm trying to get him to apply for a specialized high school, but he's not interested. Obviously, for everyone watching at home, unique key interests are something that many of us in the autism world have. I mean, I could tell you all 30 NBA teams. I won't do it during this Facebook Live. But Jesse, what would be some advice you would give to Rachel? Because I know you have a few key interests yourself.
Right. Video games, they took me to the moon as a child. So I get it. And honestly, I'd want to do the exact same thing as your child, Rachel, at age 13. But obviously, playing video games all day is not healthy. And at the same time, you cannot torpedo this interest completely. It's important to factor in video game time and remind him that you understand this is important in his routine, even if you wish that he were out making friendships instead of in front of his virtual world all day long. But if it is that important, then make it happen and let him know that there will be a time for video game binges. In fact, maybe you can block out 6 hours on the weekend for video games, as long as he spends the rest of the week being productive and doing what's expected of him. Maybe 6 hours is too extreme, but how about 2 hours? Letting him know that the video games are going to be there and you get that this is his world. And it's kind of like, what's your special interest, Carrie or Rachel? What do you like to do, Carrie, that takes you to the moon, that you do all day long if you had a choice?
Basketball and movies. Yeah. I could literally watch Netflix and eat pretzel M&Ms until I was 80 years old. And the same thing with basketball. I have NBA League Pass. I could do all that. Reward systems are important. I think that's what you're trying to get at, Jesse, to build on self-motivation. Use those key interests as rewards to get through the academics, to get to that specialized high school. I think that's really important.
Right. That's a specialized high school sounds like a wonderful thing. Maybe he's reluctant to apply, Rachel, because he thinks of it as the special high school where he's not going to make friends. He wants to have those experiences where he gets the woman of his dreams and he wants to feel normal. And you have to reinforce the fact that you have to start out small first, then build your way up. And I also have a tactic called pro-nonsense. Pro-nonsense is combining productivity with utter nonsense. I too would like to watch TV all day long, but I also have a treadmill desk that allows me to exercise, type emails, and do what I have to do all day long. So it can combine like three things at once.
So, Douglas, I love you, man. You're up at 1 a.m. watching this. So Douglas writes, can we watch this tomorrow? Yes. So all these videos are saved on my Facebook page, Carrie's Autism Journey. If you just click on the video tab, I mean, one of the reasons why me and Jesse connected was we had a few weeks ago an autistic teacher who is from the UK who talked about virtual learning, but also teaching as somebody who's on the autism spectrum. And next Monday, we're going to kick off Black History Month, we're going to have a young man who's Black talk about being autistic in the Black community. So you could check out all these videos. After the live is done, you can rewatch them at your leisure just by going to my Facebook page, giving it a like, and then going to the video tab. Rachel says that she's a reality show fan, but my real life school is nurse for special needs, and he's listening to us right now. So there you go, Jesse. You're making a lot of people really, really happy by being here and answering a few questions. So Jesse, one of the final questions I had, and we'll obviously leave it open for a few more questions if you have the time. Penguin was such a very cool opportunity for you. And for people at home, Penguin is one of the leading publishing companies in the world. How did that opportunity come about? And, you know, how did that flourish over time?
I landed my book deal in 2008, and a lot of tiny steps leading up to that moment took place. It's a long process to publish a book, but I remember learning that I was going to have a literary agent, which is the most important step to getting published on Friday the 13th of all possible days. They say that Friday the 13th is lucky for Jewish people, apparently, but I ended up submitting query letters, which is a one-page description of my book. Then I wrote a book proposal, which is essentially a small book in itself, and one thing led to another, and I gave the agent anything that they wanted, and that's how Atypical came about. It's this is the first book, Atypical: Life with Asperger's, in 20 1/3 chapters. The book was created despite a lot of procrastination. I definitely did not start right away, and the second book, Getting a Life with Asperger's, that was created with ninja-like speed. I said immediately, I'm not going to do that again. I'm going to pound this out like there's no tomorrow and not waste time. You know, something that solved one problem and created another. I turned it in a whole month early, but it was a much more mediocre first draft, even though it came together in a better fashion toward the end. I want to let people know that there's often no such thing as completely solving all of your problems. You should consider yourself a winner and declare victory if the new problem is less severe than the old one. Meaning that in graduate school, we have an expression, the only good type of a thesis is a done thesis. So people with autism or anyone with challenges, they have to be good at understanding what's constructive criticism and what's complete malicious nonsense that's unfair and even bullying, even if it comes across as supposedly being constructive criticism. So
my friend John writes that 13 is a Jewish lucky number in general. See, I'm even learning some new stuff tonight. So the final question before we just end with final thoughts. I love this question because you talk about transition to adulthood so much. Lucinda writes, hi, Lucinda. It's really hard to find a job on the spectrum. How can I get a job? I need work or get a scholarship for graduate school. Obviously, Lucinda, one of the big things is that unemployment rates are skyrocketing right now due to COVID-19 and so many of the layoffs. So it is a challenging time. But especially in our autism community, the majority of individuals with autism are unemployed or underemployed. So it's a really difficult job. The one recommendation I would give before I'll let Jesse kind of go off on this is the spectrumcareers.com. It's a job portal that actually focuses on hiring people with autism. All the jobs are specifically for those with autism. So check out the spectrumcareers.com. It's a job portal, really, really great. For college, one of our nonprofit initiatives, along with this self-advocate video series, is we provide scholarships for students with autism to go to college. So, and even if you're doing your graduate work, you can still apply as long as you're applying in the next academic year. You could go to kfmmakingadifference.org, and I'll include that link in the comments. And our application for the spring ends in April 26th. So, Jesse, what have been some of your experiences with the whole employment challenge in our community?
It's been a challenge as well for me. Even after publishing my first book, the best I could do for a while was washing dishes for only $9 an hour. There's no shame in that. And certainly I never felt like I was better than my incredible coworkers. But at the same time, I was thinking, seriously, I published a book with one of the best publishing companies on the planet. I've been able to improve so much. Why is this still not enough? What in the world does the world want from me? But you have to always remember there's no shame in doing any kind of work as long as you're making a difference and earning your own money. There's no such thing as being a loser when you're getting up in the morning, going to work and doing the best you can. You should consider yourself to be a hero and a role model. Even if your cousin is getting his doctorate after having graduated from Harvard Medical School or something, you should never compare yourself to others. But programs like the one I'm employed by definitely give someone more of a fighting chance. I'm the media and active. Oh, go ahead, Carrie.
No, Jesse, what I was going to say is if you don't mind, obviously, if you want to keep it private, that's perfectly fine too. What's the name of your employment, the company that employs you?
It's Living Resources Incorporated and the College Experience. The bulk of my work is performed for the College Experience, and it's a not-for-profit group in Albany with the incentive of giving people the college education of their dreams when they have a disability, meaning that they go to a mainstream college with mainstream students, and they have the option of auditing a regular class if the work is not challenging enough for them, but it's catered to their intellectual level. And in their senior year, we have 2 years, freshman and senior, but in their senior year they get internships. The internships often lead to full-time employment when they graduate if they do a good enough job and they're liked by their current supervisors, which is often the case. So as we all know, internships can very much lead to full-time employment. And I have many duties, including the volunteer coordinator and the alumni activities coordinator.
Nice.
The webpage is www.thecollegeexperience.org, one word. And Living Resources is livingresources.org.
Wonderful. So, Jesse, how can people follow you after this Facebook Live? I'm just looking at your site right now. You're on Facebook at Jesse A. Saperstein. You're also on Twitter with Jesse Saperstein. And then you also have your website. Are there any other ways that people can follow you?
Mainly Facebook, the Facebook public page, which is Jesse A. Saperstein, and my personal account, which is a public profile. That's just Jesse Saperstein. A picture is going to come up of me with my graduation uniform and family. I'm also on Instagram, but I'm not active on Instagram because, quite honestly, Facebook takes up enough of my time, and I don't want to be juggling multiple social media accounts at the same time. But maybe someday I will get more involved in Instagram.
Got it. So, Jesse, obviously, you've talked about so many great topics within this last hour. Is there anything else you would like for people at home to know about your story?
I want people to understand that there's been the fortunate experience of having lived two extremely different lives as someone on the autism spectrum. I've lived most of my 38 years feeling like and being treated as a social pariah. I can remember times when, even at restaurants, servers would pretend not to hear me and they'd run right past me. And one time, one of the servers even pounded his finger on the menu and yelled at me. I've been also treated like a stalker. There's definitely been a handful of ridiculous stalking allegations, and now life is downright more pleasant. I feel like a respected member of society. Most people treat me as an adult, and it feels wonderful, even though obviously it's not always going to be perfect. But to get to that point, you have to advocate for yourself and let people know you deserve better, and remind others that you have made a lot of progress and not everyone is going to care, but the right people will. And my philosophy is that if about 15% of humanity is not criticizing you or always finding something wrong, that means you're not doing something right. And I have to remind myself of my own advice most days.
Jesse, I love you. I wish I could talk to you all night long. So everyone at home, my name is Dr. Kerry Magger, a professional speaker and autistic self-advocate. I'm speaking with Jesse, who is an incredible advocate for our community. If you've learned anything from tonight's Facebook Live, I'm leaving a link right below. If you have a few bucks to spare and want to support our video series so we can produce even more videos moving forward, go to kfmmakingandifference.org/donate. And I will say that our next Facebook Live, we're trying to do these weekly now to support more and more self-advocates in our community, will be on Monday at 7 p.m., where we will be talking to Ryan Lee, who is a young Black man who will be talking for Black History Month about being autistic in the Black community, where we talk a little bit about the racial differences between diagnosis, where unfortunately in our community, white children are diagnosed far quicker than any other race. Yeah. In the world. So we'll be talking a little bit about that, but also a lot of other great topics. So thank you all so much for tuning in, and have a wonderful night. And thanks to Jesse again.